meditation from the larger Catechism takes a look at question number 117, which reads as follows. How is the Sabbath, or the Lord's Day, to be sanctified? The answer is the Sabbath, or Lord's Day, is to be sanctified by an holy resting all the day, not only from such works as are at all times sinful, but even from such worldly employments and recreations as are on other days lawful, and making it our delight to spend the whole time, except so much of it as is to be taken up in works of necessity and mercy, in the public and private exercises of God's worship. And to that end we are to prepare our hearts, and with such foresight, diligence, and moderation, to dispose and seasonably dispatch our worldly business, that we may be the more free and fit for the duties of that day. The question as to how we are to keep the Sabbath day is one that is a challenge for modern Christians today. There are so many different activities that we enjoy on a Sunday afternoon. In fact, in our community, you will find activities taking place even during the time of the worship service hour. I was amazed to see Little League games and soccer games and that kind of thing occurring Sunday mornings, such as the departure from Christian faith and values been in our culture today. The Catechism reminds us that not only are we to set aside 1 hour a day for the Lord, or a couple hours in the Sunday morning for the Lord, but the whole day belongs to the Lord. When I was growing up, we would have a worship service on Sunday morning with Sunday school, and then return in the evening for a worship service again, and close the day in that regard. And hopefully we will be able to do that here before too long. But this is the kind of thing that is important for God's people, to be devoting themselves to the Word of God, hearing His Word open to us, and enjoying the fellowship of the saints through the day. Sunday afternoons would often be a time of rest, of catching a nap and having a good meal with family and friends. Perhaps a time for Bible study and personal reading as well. These are ways in which we can positively keep this commandment and observe it in ways which strengthen our faith and do good for the church. And so the Catechism reminds us that certainly on Sunday, as opposed to, or in conformity with the rest of the week, we should avoid all kinds of worldly or sinful activities. That kind of goes without saying. But the Sabbath calls upon us to put aside our work requirements during the course of the week, and even the ordinary forms of recreation that we might enjoy during the earlier part of the week. We should devote the day to God and His purposes, and the fellowship with His people, and advancing His work. One of the ways that we do that is not simply by reading Scriptures, praying, perhaps listening to Christian music through the day and these kinds of things, or fellowshipping with others, but also ministering to those who are in need, taking the time on the Lord's Day, as opposed to other days, to take care of those who are elderly, poor, sick, and shut in, and that kind of thing. So the Catechism reminds us that we are to make that day a delight throughout the day, but we may take part in works of necessity and mercy. That is to say that we should be considerate to those who are in need and minister to their needs, particularly on the Lord's Day. You recall Jesus with His disciples passing through the grain fields, and the Pharisees complaining that the disciples were harvesting, picking the grains, and working by cracking the grain and eating it. This was work to their mind, but Jesus reminded them that the Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath. The goal of the Sabbath is to bring rest, healing, refreshment, not to be a burden, not to be a form of ritual that stifles and crushes life. And so the disciples, in picking this grain, were meeting their physical needs. They were hungry. They God doesn't want you to go hungry on His day. Eat, enjoy. That's what God has provided for you. So, that was not work. Similarly, Jesus said, if your animal falls into a pit on the Sabbath, you don't just wait until the following day to pull your animal out of that pit. The animal could die. You'll hear the animal bleeding and crying out for help during the whole day. Are you going to sit back and not do anything? Well, of course you go and deliver the animal. How much more important is it then for us to minister to those who are needy, those who are ill and sick, and to take care of them? And so the Catechism recognizes that first, our day should be given over to the Lord in His worship, and fellowship with all God's people. But then, secondly, we should take care of those who are in need as well. And so you might spend the afternoon shoveling somebody's walkway who might be too elderly to clear their walks on their own, or helping out in other ways that would be of care for them. These are ways in which we show the purpose or the intent of the Sabbath, to bring help and to restore life to those who are in need. And finally, the Catechism closes by reminding us that we need to prepare our work week so that we can really enjoy the Sabbath day and not be preoccupied with the events of the previous week, or concerned or thinking about the things that are yet to come. Our time here should be focused on God and His Word, drawing near to Christ in fellowship with Him, and not be thinking about the other things in the course of the week. I remember my father years ago used to say that Sunday was an oasis for him. It was his experience that work during the course of the week was hard. He worked as a letter carrier and have to drive 45 minutes each morning to Philadelphia, sometimes in the cold winter, ice storms and so forth, to deliver the mail. But Sunday, it was a day of rest. Sunday, you could put that all aside. Sunday, you could meet with the saints and hear Christian fellowship and be encouraged. Sunday was an oasis, and it is. It's a day of rest. It's a day of blessing. And so let's take advantage of that. Let's rejoice in what God has provided for us through Jesus Christ.